Hello. Welcome back to the second video on One Punch Man and my reread of it and some of the things I'm picking up. A couple of changes from the last video. It's another video, probably like the third or fourth in a row, where I felt like I've really been struggling to actually get my thoughts across at times. So I've written down some like fully realized sentences, and I'm going to be talking about what I've written there. Hopefully that will just mean we can get through everything a good bit faster, basically. And yeah, I mean, that's really all there is to say. I don't want to spend too much time on this sort of intro section because there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, really, and I'd rather get through it faster. So in this video I'm going to be going through all of the sort of Hero Association Saga, I think it's called, which is everything up to the defeat of Boros. And to put it simply, I thought this was probably a significantly better section than sort of introductory one, and that's because I thought it had a great arc for Saitama and just a generally really great theme, and that theme is being able to overcome having a mixed reputation and realizing that it is maybe not as important as people often treat it, really. And we see that through Saitama, who starts the arc joining the Hero Association in order to become, you know, basically finally get the recognition he feels he deserves, and to get fans and things like that. And what he quickly discovers is it's not that simple, and so quite a bit of this arc is spent, or the saga is spent, with him grappling that, and then, or grappling with that, and then the sort of second half, I guess, of the story is him having already grappled with that and come to that conclusion, and it's spent making sure we understand the conclusion that he himself reached, which I thought was really good, rather than have this sort of character development be split over an entire quite long saga. They make sure to do the actual development part early, and then make sure that how the development has actually happened is established over a longer period of time, which is good. So anyway, I mean, let's get into some specifics. So first thing that happens in this arc is the actual examination that's required for you to get into the Hero Association, which Saitama passes, you know, easily enough. Quite a lot of funny visuals here when he's doing the physical test. This one's obviously my favourite, with his head in the ceiling. There's nothing really to add here other than that it's a funny moment. It's one of the stronger comedic moments of the saga, and it's a great way to open because it really sets a quite light-hearted tone, which, you know, is still true of this saga. Not necessarily the whole way through the manga. It gets a tiny bit more serious at times, so good to establish that this is still on the silly side, I guess. Anyway, then he gets his results, and unfortunately for him, he barely passes and ends up sitting at the bottom of Class C, which is the lowest class of heroes in the association, because his written test was maybe not so up to par, and Genos goes straight to S, probably unsurprisingly, because he is, you know, he's more of the sort of stereotypical superhero, and I mean, that's his role in the story, so of course he goes straight to the top, while Saitama, who's maybe a bit more unconventional, ends up at the bottom. Makes sense. It's pretty obvious sort of symbolism, I think, and it's pretty good. And because of his position falling straight to Class C, he is immediately disrespected by someone higher than him in the association, that being Snek, who is an A-class hero, who attacks him after the exam, as you can see on the right, and he gets defeated in about, you know, less than a second, but still. And that sets up probably the most important thing, external factor that causes Saitama's arc over the saga, which is the hierarchy that the Hero Association operates within. Basically, it's entirely built with this incredibly specific hierarchy where every single individual hero is in their own tier of the hierarchy, because they're all graded individually. They're all ranked from 1 to like whatever within each class, and that means that everyone who's higher up on the rank is going to look down on everyone who's lower on the rank, and also the opposite, I guess. They're going to look up to the people above them, which also creates problems because the people above them are always looking down on the people below them, and that triggers an effect where they then look down on the people below them as well. So it's like it's almost like a cascade here, where everyone is constantly trying to find somebody they can look down on and find someone they can disrespect in order for them to end up going higher up. And as Saitama starts at the bottom, he doesn't have anyone to look down on, but also I feel like, it doesn't really matter. That's just not in his character, because, I mean, he's not a hero really for the fame, and that's sort of what he realizes. He never became a hero to be famous. He became a hero to save people. And that's the key difference. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. The next thing we get is a bit of training of Genos. This is really the only training we have of Genos. And there's some pretty nice action here. We get to see Genos' sort of upgraded cyborg body. And I mean, these panels are just great. I think this is, this manga is really great when it comes to these panels that almost look like smear frames because of how blurry they are. And that makes it like 100 times better for reasons I don't really know how to explain. But either way, the difference between the two of them in power is still ridiculous. Saitama is far stronger than him, and that's very clearly established here. This is the first time we really see it as well, because it's the first time the two of them have actually fought. We only have sort of third-party comparisons where we compare how they match against the same individual, but now we really get a sort of clear scale of difference. And that also shows us that Saitama, he's beyond any Class S hero as well. There is nobody around stronger than him. And one thing I'd like to highlight from this section of the story as well is this. I thought this was a really nice moment. So I think this is the first time we see Saitama really treat Genos as, I guess, as a friend, really. Because up to this point, he's sort of been indulging him after he kind of unintentionally agreed to teach him. Excuse me. But he's not particularly been, pleased to see him most of the time. But that all changes here. I think this moment is the first time he really treats him as a friend, and we can start to see that they actually have a real bond forming, which is great for Saitama, because as much as he sort of places the fact that he's quite emotionless and distant on the fact that he's unable to get an equal fight, I think there's definitely part of it is the fact that he just doesn't seem to socialize with people at all, and he almost really struggles with socializing, right? We saw in the flashbacks as well, he really struggled to fit in when he was younger. So it's really nice to see him actually get to bond with somebody and see how he's, he's smiling, he's feeling that emotion finally. That's really nice. So yeah, worth pointing that out. And their relationship across the saga is really great. I'm not going to be pointing it out too much, but it's just excellent. So yeah, we then learn that the C-class heroes, the rank Saitama is in, they are basically like lapdogs almost, in a way. They have to work directly for the association. If they don't save the day, I guess, at least once a week, then they get kicked off. And Saitama doesn't realize this because obviously he's kind of waiting for these massive threats to show up. So he has to like run around. This panel's really funny. I love his eyes in it. Looking for a criminal, and he can't find one, and he unintentionally, as he's relatively unknown, triggers a lot of negative public attention. And this is the first time we get where his reputation starts to take a bit of a dive, because the public in the city he's running around in are kind of freaked out by him. So he actually runs into Sonic here, which I kind of was almost surprised by because I forgot this actually happened. But yeah, Sonic comes back incredibly quickly into the story, but before anything can really happen between the two of them, they're interrupted by this guy on the right, who is called Tank Top Tiger. There we go, it's in my notes, thank God, because I had completely forgotten. This guy's like Class C rank 10 or something along those lines. I can't really remember. He's like in the top 10, I think. Oh, it says on the screen. It says he's 6. That's that's embarrassing of a thing to miss there, but yeah. So he's pretty high within Class C, and as a result, to get that extra edge and finally enter Class B, to him, it's all about making himself seem better than the rest of Class C. He has to prove that he's above them. So he's especially looking down on someone like Saitama, who's just shown up. And additionally, I think it's not exactly a surprise here. He also represents the public in general here, and public sort of view of Saitama. He's looking down on Saitama and he's viewing him as a nuisance. As other public, he's basically an individualized version of their view, and there's quite a few characters across the saga who at times will represent that individualized version of the public eye, and I think that was a really effective way of communicating that. If someone like Tank Top Tiger wasn't here and the public were just like, you seem really suspicious or something, I think it would be a much less effective way of telling the story, and it also wouldn't be as comedic, because we obviously know that this guy could get beaten to a pulp in like 5 seconds and killed easily. Anyway, oh, that's not, there's more to talk about here. I just thought that would be another slide with Sonic. But anyway, Sonic then, I guess we'll just say incapacitates Tank Top Tiger. That was terrible. Tank Top Tiger. And starts going on a bit of a rampage. Saitama takes quite a hilariously long amount of time to realize that if he beats Sonic and puts Sonic in prison, that counts as him saving the day. But then he does it, Sonic goes to prison, and he'll be back later. There's a really fun moment here as well where Saitama bites through Sonic's sword. It's such a weird response, and technically it is like the most sensible thing he can do because the sword is coming at his mouth, but I just think it's a really creative decision. So I'm really impressed with that from the manga, really like that. And it was really funny. So yeah, pretty great. We then cut to this fight with these two people who aren't even going to really show up again. That being this guy with the moustache, who I can't remember the name of, and also this other guy, he's not even on the screen. His name is like Golden Ball or something, and he fires like balls. They're fighting this monster. It's inside Saitama's city, and they're trying to deal with it, but they lose, and I think they're both Class A heroes, so it's quite a tough monster. And I wouldn't really highlight this because it's not particularly relevant to like the themes I want to talk about here, because I'm focusing on this whole reputation idea, and I don't think this really does much to communicate that. These two are just like chill guys sitting in the middle of Class A doing their thing. They don't really have anything to do with that theme. If it weren't for the fact that the action in this scene is like really great. This moustache guy is really fun to watch. It's another example of taking Saitama out of the picture and then creating a really great action set piece with it, which I was really enjoying. So yeah, thumbs up, really good job here. And there's also a nice joke where the monster gets defeated by Saitama basically instantly. Also, it's a sign that not everyone involved in the association is like Tank Top Tiger. Not everyone is constantly thinking about moving up and constantly thinking about pushing other people down in order to do that. There are some people who are just kind of cool, right? So yeah, pretty fun little aside. And right after that, we are introduced to Tatsumaki, one of my favorite characters, not just because she's pretty entertaining, but also because of the force that she represents more than anyone else, which is the sort of the ego that comes with being a hero, I guess, is what she represents more than anyone else, as the rank 2 hero in the entire association. And we're also introduced very briefly to her sister, who I forgot the name of, but she's significant later, but I don't have anything to say on her now. And this guy with the glasses is also an important character. This is like a bonus chapter, and he's who we're following. And he's like barely squeezed his way into Class B, I think. And he joined this major faction. Because of course there's factions within the association. Which, if anything, have been created specifically because of the... I haven't mentioned this really, but this hierarchical system that I've been talking about within the association is like, it's really bad and unnecessary, and it also led to the creation of factionism within the association, which is obviously nothing but destructive. Anyway, this guy, Tatsumaki, helps out this sort of group unintentionally by defeating the monster they were fighting, and then he kind of comes to the conclusion that since he's inferior in terms of pure strength to her, he can never be as good of a hero as her. And then Saitama comes in. Obviously he's like a really low rank, and he defeats the monster, like another monster I think, in front of him. And then he tells him stuff that basically he tells him like, maybe you just need to work a bit harder, and maybe you just need to stop thinking about like climbing the ranks, you know. It's almost like being a social climber, I guess. It's a parallel to that in a way. Maybe just, you know, focus on bettering yourself and things like that, rather than comparing yourself to others, and then you'll be sorted. And that's also the start of the sort of change in philosophy that Saitama himself has. And yeah, I thought this was a great little bonus chapter. I had to point it out. Also, it does introduce one of the best characters, so that's great as well. The next thing we get is with the Meteor. Is this the only slide on the Meteor? Yes. So there's a lot to talk about here. So basically a meteor is falling on Saitama City. Because they don't know Saitama can do anything about it, they instead call all of the S-class heroes in to help out. But only Genos and this guy Bang actually show up. Except later Metal Knight also shows up to help out with the meteor, and these two represent two sides of heroism, I guess. In the both of them are saving people, or at least trying to, but their motivations for doing it are entirely distinct from each other, and they're distinct from Saitama's motivation as well. So with Bang, his motivation for being a hero is simply that it's honorable. It's the right thing to do, and that's what he has been taught since, you know, probably since he was a child, and as a result, he will continue to be a hero until he dies, presumably, because he's already quite old. I would guess he's probably about 80, really, if I had to guess. I need another drink. My throat's been really dry this recording, it's rubbish. Sorry about that. Anyway, Metal Knight, on the other hand, he basically does it for personal gain. It benefits him to save people because it means he can stay in the Hero Association, and therefore he can use their resources because he's like a super tech guy. This is like an automatically piloted sort of robot thing that he's controlling. And as a result, when the technology he's testing fails to stop the meteor, he just fucks off immediately. Which obviously gives us he's the first true person who's like, because Tank Top Tiger, yeah, he's a dickhead, but he is at least trying to help out. Whereas this guy, he's more than that, right? He actively just is unempathetic and doesn't want to help people. He's only doing it if it helps him. And yeah, and then on the third side we have Genos, who tries to sacrifice himself, because, you know, that's what he thinks Saitama would have to do in that situation as well, basically. But of course Saitama comes up and he punches the meteor and it breaks into like a million bits, and as a result, nobody dies. However, the city is destroyed, and as a result we get the end of the sort of Saitama grappling part of this reputation character arc. which comes in here and here. So, after the city is destroyed, credit goes to several people, including Saitama, and they all rise up in the ranks. A lot of people know that Saitama is the one who actually broke the meteor into bits, so they blame him for the destruction of the city, which is obviously anyone in the audience knows is ridiculous, but realistically, put yourself in these people's shoes. This guy punched a meteor and then the bits of the meteor destroyed your city. It doesn't exactly seem like, I guess it's not like a super duper unbelievable conclusion for people to reach, and I imagine some of you would probably reach it as well. Just saying. So as a result, the sort of dislike of Saitama and the poor reputation of Saitama multiplies considerably from when he was just running around being a nuisance. And symbolically, he's then attacked by 2 tank top superheroes instead of 1. Because we also get this guy, who I think is called Tank Top Black Hole. That I could not verify, though. I don't have it written down. And as a result of this, with all this reputation coming in, Saitama, who literally joined the association to get fans, instead comes to the conclusion that, well, maybe I don't need fans. Maybe that's just me being foolish. You know, and I almost think it was an attempt to find another way out of his sort of almost depression, I guess. It's not a real depression, I don't really know. I don't know if it is really, but I'm going to call it that from now on, I think, just because it's easier to describe it as that. Anyway, he comes to the conclusion that that isn't a way out for him. Having fans isn't important to him, because what's important is that he saves people and is a hero by his own values, not by other people's values. And as a result, he gets a bit mad at them, he shouts at them, he allows his reputation to continue to drop, essentially, because that's what he thinks is the right thing to do, and that's more important to him. And that realization, upon basically, you know, this is what he's thinking about in this panel, is technically the end of the development within Saitama's character arc for this entire saga. From this point on, he's pretty locked into how his philosophy has shifted to no longer caring about his reputation within the public eye. However, we still have 2 more arcs to basically establish the way that he's going to manifest that philosophy, I guess. It's maybe not the best way of putting it, but I feel like it's not terrible, you know? And that brings us to the deep sea invasion stuff, with the Sea King and all these like soldiers and things. And to be honest, I would say while this arc is maybe quite thematically strong, the actual pacing of it is too slow. There are too many unnecessary fights. To sort of go into the structure here, this guy called the Deep Sea King comes out of the sea and he's trying to take over the Earth, and he fights a bunch of people and they all lose, and then Saitama shows up at the end. And to be honest, I think that to really make this arc feel a bit better paced, you would need to drop the number of people who fight him before Saitama. And the reason for that is that this isn't a villain or like antagonist or whatever who has particular thematic relevance. He's just another generic bad guy, so it feels like he sticks around for too long compared to like the other people. Like, you could easily swap him with the like big dudes from like chapter 3 of the manga, and I don't think very much would really change. Whereas by comparison, Boros, who is our next main antagonist, actually has some thematic relevance, so it's more important that he gets that length, he gets that longer arc, I guess. If you get what I mean, yeah. Anyway, so to start, there's the Sea King or whatever, and I mean he has a pretty great design. I have to say that much. We introduced this guy Stinger, and we also meet this guy Lightning Max, who's another Class A hero. I haven't even got his picture in here. They both take turns fighting Deep Sea King, and they both lose. That's all you need to know. I put Stinger here because I think he has the more interesting moveset to see in the manga, right? And definitely in the anime, I think it would look awesome there. Um, but either way, they're both beaten, and I mean, I'll start off by saying this. You could easily merge the two of them together, and you would shorten the pacing by a decent amount, and I think that would make the arc a lot stronger. But anyway, after this we get an actually important introduction, which is the introduction of Puri Puri Prisoner, who is an S-class hero who is in prison, and it's all based on a very... I'm just gonna say it, I don't like the joke to do with Puri Puri Prisoner at all. So the joke here, I was originally trying to maybe walk around it a bit and skirt around it, but I'm just gonna say I hate it. The joke is basically that he is in prison and then he sees, I mean it says here, he sees men who he's attracted to and then kidnaps them and takes them to prison, and then I mean he just sexually assaults them. There's nothing else to say, right? While they're in prison, and because they're criminals or whatever, people don't really seem to mind, and I think it's a really weird... It's just a weird joke. It's just a weird thing to joke about in general. I think sexual assault full stop is just weird to make jokes about most of the time, and in this case it doesn't feel appropriate, and it's not even very well executed, and I don't want to be that guy really, but the fact that it's a gay man who's doing this does seem like it's come from a place of some level of internalized homophobia, right? Like, that's a specific choice. So, you know, I'm just gonna leave it there. So I really don't like anything about Puri Puri Prisoner, basically, but what I do enjoy is the fight between the two of them. Unfortunately, he has really great action. He's basically just a big bruiser, and so we get these big... I mean, look at these. Like, most of the other heroes in One Punch Man, especially up to this point, aren't able to make action like this. Like, this is like the Hulk fighting the Hulk, or someone else like that. I don't know. I'm not a Marvel like expert or anything, but you know, it's awesome. But it's pretty obvious that he's gonna lose, right? And I don't know why I even included two fucking slides of this, really, but yeah. Anyway, alongside him, because he escaped from prison to get involved in the fight, is Sonic, of course, who then gets to fight the Deep Sea King as well. And I think that while originally I was maybe like, okay, this is another unnecessary fight, we've now had like basically 3 Sonic fights in a row, and that's too many. He's not that interesting of a character. I actually think this one serves a purpose of setting up an arc for Sonic that I have no memory of whether or not it actually happens, or if anything significant happens in the part of the manga I've actually read before, but I think this is definitely set up. This is him realizing that there are multiple people, not just Saitama, who are stronger than him. And that's all I really have to say. I think it's fine, but it's probably the second easiest fight to cut after Lightning Max's. So, yeah. Anyway, Genos shows up, and I have nothing else to add. He just shows up, it fits in his character. The more notable thing here is the arrival of Moomin Rider, who we did talk about for about 2 seconds in the last video, but basically he is the rank 1 Class C hero who refuses to rank up because he doesn't view himself as physically strong enough. Another reason why this hierarchy absolutely sucks. It creates this weird world where everyone values physical strength so ridiculously highly that they can't even see any other strength they have as a benefit. But what makes Moomin Rider so great in this situation is, in spite of his low rank, he does everything he can to stop the Deep Sea King. He like holds him back and stuff, and it's great. He managed to get the Deep Sea King to leave the civilians alone for a bit, just through his determination. He's a really great character, super fun, and very likable. It's a shame he doesn't see enough value in himself to rank up to Class B, I guess. But still, crazy respect to him. But obviously he's beaten. But luckily, before he's killed, Saitama does show up and save the day. And this panel that we're looking at right now is my favorite panel in the manga thus far. And I don't normally talk about art that much in manga, because I'm not exactly like a visual art expert or anything, but I'm gonna give it my best shot here because I really love this panel. So throughout this point, and you can see this in the pictures I've shown, in most of the panels where the Deep Sea King is present, right, or in all of them really, he dominates the space. He is the forefront of the space, except with maybe this exception. But almost everywhere else, and you look at this one as well, he is taking up more than half of the panel pretty much, and he is easily the most, he's who you're looking at, primarily, every single time without fail. And then here, he suddenly looks absolutely tiny comparatively, even if he's still taking up a relatively decent portion of the panel because he's huge, right? But he still looks so much smaller because we've only seen him huge the whole way through this story. And you might be thinking, okay, but Saitama, he's even smaller, so that doesn't really work. He still looks bigger than Saitama, right? But the answer I would give is not really, because I mean, look at the edges of each of the panel, right? So the impact of Saitama's punch is spreading across the entire panel, and since we associate that impact with Saitama, it makes Saitama seem as large as the impact of his punch. So he actually seems considerably larger than the Deep Sea King in this panel, and I think that's what makes it so excellent, really. It's not especially complicated or anything, but I fuck with it, and I hope that was like pretty good, because I don't normally talk about manga art. So I hope that was a decent bit of analysis. Yeah. Cool, right? Also note that the only other two people even near the Deep Sea King at this point are Genos and Moomin Rider, which I think speaks to the fact that they're probably the most determined two people who were fighting him in the first place. Anyway, then Saitama's reputation, it doesn't go up because of this, partly because of this idiot, and partly because Saitama himself doesn't really care anymore, and I'll talk about that in a mo. But this kid suggests the idea that, you know, like, maybe everyone else was just weak, basically, and that sort of spreads a bit of discontent. And upon realizing this, Saitama realizes that if his reputation goes up from this, then everyone else's reputation will go down. The view of Genos and Moomin Rider and Puri Puri Prisoner and... I mean, not really Puri Puri Prisoner, because he didn't get defeated in front of the crowd. But like Lightning Max, Stinger, and like these other heroes who are there who I didn't even bother mentioning, all of their reputations go down if his goes up. So he decides to purposefully pretend like all of the work was done by them and he just landed the final blow. Basically allowing his reputation to go down because he doesn't care about it anymore. We already established that. So other people can go up, and that is great because it really characterizes him. Further, having reached this conclusion, it's not like he's like, okay, I just need to keep it around the same. He just doesn't care where it goes at all. It can go up, it can go down, it doesn't matter. He'll let it, whatever happens to it, just happens, you know? But the one person who does realize what he did and actually does view him highly because of it is Moomin Rider. And that's great because that's one of the few people in the entire story who Saitama really has true respect for, because he has the same heroic ideals as Saitama. His interest is in saving people, not in having a good reputation. He just happens to also have a good reputation through circumstance. And that's great, and I really like the little thank you letter he wrote him as well. I didn't immediately sort of put two and two together and realize it was him. I just assumed it was like a little kid or something. And I thought it was really sweet. So yeah. Great arc in terms of themes and making sure we understand Saitama, but bit too long, I think. Yeah. Needed a better antagonist, or to be shorter, basically. And I think the shortening is the easier route. So yeah. We get a little bonus chapter here as well, which basically takes the Saitama not caring about reputation idea and turns the word reputation into the word money. Even though he is incredibly poor, he still doesn't take the money from this kid who tries to give it to him as a reward. And I thought that was amazing, because it really shows that, like, the most important thing to him is being a hero and making sure good things happen, I guess. Yeah, even though he really, really needed that money. It's not like Reputation, which he doesn't really need. He needs that money because he's starving. But he still doesn't take it, which is really nice. Yeah. Oh, that was unintentional. Okay. Final arc we need to talk about is the alien one, where we meet all the S-class heroes, pretty much, except for Blast. And I've picked these two out, not just because they get dialogue with Saitama before the main meeting, but also because if you put them both in comparison with each other and in comparison with Bang, you end up with three differing perspectives on Saitama and on low-ranked heroes. Oh, also worth noting that he moved up to Class B after beating Deep Sea King. Yeah. So, I'm just gonna have to read my notes quickly, sorry. So Bang, because he knows how strong Saitama is, because he saw the Meteor, he views Saitama as an equal, even despite the fact that he's in Class B. He thinks that he's an equal, and there's nothing else to say. Whereas Atomic Samurai, this guy on the right, because Bang kind of hypes Saitama up a bit, and he trusts in Bang, he does respect Saitama, but at the same time he doesn't treat him as an equal, if you understand what I mean, right? Like you can see from the way he's looking at him and the way he's talking at him, he's talking to him as sort of somebody worthy of respect, but not at somebody who's on his level. He's still kind of looking down on him a bit. It's a delicate balance, and I'm not entirely sure I'm describing it right, but I hope you understand what I mean. And then finally, Tatsumaki, I mean, she just doesn't fuck with Saitama. There's not much else to say. And it's because he's in Class B. That's really it. And importantly, they are ranked 2, 3, and 4, and the highest ranked people at this meeting. So they are representative of the three ways people in S-Class in general could view Saitama, basically. Yeah. And I also think it's probably intentional that the more respectful people, i.e. Bang being the most respectful, are older. Whereas Tatsumaki is the youngest there. And she shows the least respect. I'm not sure if that says anything particularly interesting, but I don't think it's unintentional, you know? Yeah. And it definitely fits within all three of their characters, right? The fact that they're that old, it works. Anyway. Then we meet Then we meet all of the S-Class heroes. I have nothing really else to say here. They look cool, and some of them seem like they would be interesting characters, and I mean, I know some of them are. And some of them don't really. I mean, the obvious one is Pig God. He's just a joke, he eats. There's nothing else to really say. But yeah. That's all there is. I don't have anything really else to say. We then learn what's going on. It's not to do with these aliens immediately. Instead, it's because the sort of prophecy the Hero Association use is dead, and her final prophecy said that the Earth would be in serious danger. And then this big UFO shows up and blows up this whole city. And all the S-Class heroes are like, they need to deal with the aliens. That's the arc. So, I've completely lost my train of thought. There's nothing else to say on this slide. Okay. So one of the aliens is down on the ground, and he's fighting this guy who's Atomic Samurai's pupil. And he actually takes his arm off, and he's completely beating him. Meanwhile, everyone in the meeting is panicking and talking and trying to plan out a strategy, except for Saitama, who immediately jumps into action. And I think that really shows the difference between Saitama and these other heroes. They're worrying about how to do everything correctly, and he's just doing it. You know, it's almost like second nature to him. It's not even second nature. It's first nature to him that he is doing hero things. That's who he is. Whereas everyone else needs to think about it. Even Genos. No offense to Genos. Meanwhile, Genos, he basically reaches a similar conclusion to Saitama, but regarding a different group of people. God, I need another drink. Maybe it's because I'm talking quite fast. I think I am. But anyway. So Genos, I think, came into this meeting hoping to be on equal footing with the rest of the S-Class heroes, but he quickly realizes that, similar to how Saitama doesn't need good reputation in the eye of the public, he doesn't need good reputation in the eyes of his peers. And that's what we get in this left panel. And meanwhile, we're meeting Boros, who, from a design perspective, is definitely the most interesting antagonist so far, right? So he's intimidating. I don't need to say that. Look at his hair, look at his chest, and look how muscular he is as well. He's a scary guy. But the thing that really gets me with this panel, and generally a lot of his panels before the actual fight, is how almost kind he looks. Which is weird, because I don't think he's a kind character or anything. But, you know, that face doesn't look like somebody who wants to commit harm. That just looks like, well, it's like Saitama's face, right? This blank sort of neutral expression and this big, wide eye, almost of innocence, I guess you could say. It's a clear parallel visually. He looks more like Saitama than anyone else, even though he's an alien. Yeah. Thought that was interesting. Anyway, Metal Bat and Puri Puri Prisoner and these guys are fighting, and all of them basically refuse to think of anything other than just sort of punching and slicing, etc. And you know, it's pretty on the nose here, but these guys are all a bit on these sort of stuck in their ways people who they don't think to go, I need to go up to the ship and beat everyone up, like that's what Saitama is doing right now. They're dealing with things one step at a time. I was going to say one day at a time, but it all takes place in one day, so that's a stupid expression here. One step at a time, and in the same way, every single step. Whereas Saitama, he's thinking differently every encounter he meets, really. I mean, he obviously punches them, but he always does something slightly different. In this case, he's busy getting lost exploring the ship and kind of having a good time doing it. Yeah. Also worth noting that this, the pupil guy, who I didn't write his name down like an idiot, is another person who's willing to think outside the box, and he's also young and not Class S. I think those are two traits that define why he's in that same category as Saitama. Yeah. Okay, so then we get some stuff with Boros. So he's also here because of a prophecy. It's basically prophecy versus prophecy. The prophecy is that he'll come to Earth and have a really fun battle. And he thinks that'll be with Saitama, which seems obvious from the narrative perspective, right? As the reader, that seems like it's obvious who he's sort of fated to match, and indeed he is fated to match him. There is a clear difference between Boros and Saitama, even though both of them have a similar motivation of wanting to fight somebody on equal footing for once, because they're both much stronger than everyone else around them. But the thing about Boros is, rather than wanting to be a hero and utilize his strength in a heroic way, he uses his strength for harm. He's like a pirate, basically, and he's not a good person. He's probably killed lots of innocent people, right? However, he definitely shares the most parallels with Saitama of any antagonist, and I think he obviously works incredibly well in that regard, as almost a mirror for Saitama. This is what could have happened if he placed his strength in a different facet of life. If he used it for bad, he would end up like Boros. And guess what? Boros dies. I mean, it's obvious, but like, you know, it's telling us something here. Yeah. Anyway, so then we get two things which I think are worth noting. So first of all, Tatsumaki returning the shells, I would categorize in the let me restart. I would say this puts Tatsumaki in the category of characters who are thinking outside the box a bit. Because it's not an exceptionally creative decision or anything, but it's not just going and punching the bad guy, it's thinking about things in a more long-term view. This is the quickest way, like, to defeat as many people as possible, I guess. Not long-term at all, really, is it? But, you know. It's a much grander view than just, I need to beat up the enemy in front of me, which is what's going on below. So as much as Tatsumaki is annoying and maybe representative of ego and things, she is more similar to Saitama than a lot of the other S-class heroes in that regard. I mean, they're the only two who directly attack the ship at all. Yeah, we also get this setup, which, I don't really remember the exact point I read up to, but this has still not come to fruition. That this, like, Metal Knight is Genos' enemy. I mean, obviously it's to do with Genos', like, evil cyborg fight origin story, but beyond that, no idea. Also, we don't know anything about Drive Knight. You know, but I thought I have to note it, right? I have to note it because it will come up eventually. Surely, right? You know, it's not going to go nowhere. That's all I have to say. Yeah. Then another distinction between Saitama and Boros, which I think comes from Boros' desire to do harm, I guess, in that regard, is that he is another character who just won't shut up, and it pisses off Saitama. This is like midway through their fight, and he has been talking like non-stop, and Saitama has been silent and hasn't even attacked. And I mean, he's completely unfazed. Not much else to say there, but I thought it was quite an interesting moment. Anyway, then Boros blasts Saitama onto the moon, and then we get his two most impressive feats thus far, back to back. This is not one panel, if you're confused. It's two panels. The first one is him jumping off of the moon back to Earth, and then the second one is the punch he does, which creates this, which is his first ever serious punch. And while I don't have that much to say thematically related to these things, I mean, it's just incredibly cool. There's nothing else to say here. These are two of the coolest things you could ever do. Yeah. That's all I've got to say on that. And we are sort of coming to a wind down here. So next character we have to talk about is Amai Mask, who has sort of been popping up in the background a little bit here and there, but and important to note, here is the first scene where he really comes to prominence, and he's another character who we don't, I mean, up to the point that I'd read originally, he doesn't have anything to do really. But he is set up quite well here, and what his role is, and how he varies from the other characters. And it's all in regard to reputation. We're going back to reputation finally, and talking about that again. So Amai Mask, at first you might think, okay, he doesn't care about his reputation very much either. He's purposely antagonizing these guys. He goes in and kills the prisoners unfairly, which is obviously immoral. He's doing what he thinks is right, but I disagree. I thought that as well, and I originally even wrote that in my notes, but I think it's wrong. I think that he does care about his reputation, but he wants it to be bad, at least among other heroes. He wants these S-class heroes to dislike him. Unlike Saitama, who doesn't care either way, and Genos, who doesn't care either way. And I will agree with Genos that his comparison with Akai himself and Akai Master, I guess, is also somewhat apt, but I don't have anything else to say on that. And yeah, so then after we get this happen, Saitama comes out of the ship, and we basically get his final sort of conclusion of his character arc across this saga. How he's grappling with his understanding of his reputation, and it comes in the fact that he doesn't even bother speaking to Tatsumaki, who like immediately starts asking what's going on and berating him for sort of disobeying orders, I guess, and going onto the ship. Instead, he just goes and talks to Genos about some stuff, and they just go home. And I think that's great. We've gone from a Saitama who kind of foolishly and almost out of character illy, that's not a real word, but we'll go for it, wanted to have fans and have a good reputation, to someone who doesn't even care about how his fellow heroes view him, as long as he's doing the right thing and saving the day. And basically, as much as it feels like we're back to square one, we're back to the Saitama we get in basically chapter 1, I actually think this was a really effective arc, and it has a really good theme to it. The message here is great, you know? And yeah, I'm pretty sure that's all I have to say there. Yeah, but one final thing. So there's a bonus chapter we get where we finally get to see from the perspective of Tank Top Master, who is basically like Tiger and Black Hole's boss, who's an S-class hero. And I think this is a great look into the psyche of the sort of generic hero in the Hero Association. Unlike the rest of the S-class heroes, he's just kind of the guy, and he's quite representative, I think, of probably most of the heroes, and at least what's going on with them internally. People like Stinger and Lightning Max from the Deep Sea King stuff, for example, and of course the other tank tops. And that's that he is incredibly insecure about maintaining his rank at best. He's maybe not super bothered about going up, though it would be nice, but he absolutely refuses to let it go down. And he refuses, therefore, because he gets shown up by Tatsumaki in the fight, and then he gets shown up by Metal Knight in the aftermath. He goes back to training himself basically to death, and that insecurity is really interesting. And although I'm not immediately going to say with confidence it's something that's explored more, I think it probably will be something that's explored more, and I'm interested to see how the manga can deal with that. Because my memory of the next section of the story is that Saitama himself isn't going to have a character arc. Instead, he's going to be basically imparting character arcs onto other people for a bit. And I wonder if there's something in that for Tank Top Master, who I think has a small role in the next section of the story, though I can't really remember it. And that's it. That's the next saga pretty much covered. And I think I've gone through it pretty effectively. So yeah, conclusion. This saga is about understanding that your reputation matters less than how you view yourself and what your values are, and making sure that you keep yourself within those values. All of that is less important than than having a good reputation, especially when you're a public figure, I guess, almost. And I can't help but imagine this is in part coming from the experience of the mangaka, who I don't know the name of immediately, which I should look that up. But you know, One Punch Man, it was pretty successful, and I'm not sure if they were successful before that particularly, but I mean either way, it definitely didn't exclusively get positive attention. So I imagine the mangaka themselves had to deal with this same realization, had to come to the same realization that Saitama does in the first half of this saga, and that may be why it's so well executed, really, because of that personal connection to it. But that's all a theory. I should probably have looked that up beforehand, but I completely forgot to. It's not even in my notes or anything. But yeah, overall though, I'd say this is better than the first saga, and it's really quite great. It's still a top bit of satire, and it's very funny. The action's still great, but now there's a clear bit of character development, lots of interesting characters, across the board, and a lot of good setup for the next section of the story. So yeah, that's all I have to say, I think. So yeah, next video probably will be out relatively soon, but that might be the last one for a while because I'm going to be going on holiday. Either way, I will I'll see you guys then, I guess, and yeah, goodbye.